Hello, and welcome to LVLS Whenever, episode 146. And we're going to be looking back again on the latter half of the 1990s. But first, I've got some pickups for you. I got a new shirt from the Yeti, which I will put kind of close to the camera so you can see. It's a Chrono Trigger shirt from one of my favorite scenes from that game. Really, really cool. Happy to have that. I also imported Kage Shadow of the Ninja. I also imported the deluxe edition of Ray's Arcade Chronology, direct from Taito. So I have the Switch version, which comes with the game. It came with a DVD and a CD of Zuntata playing music from the game. It also came with these two books. One is a design works, and one is what they call a strategy guide or maneuver guide, which I think is kind of cute. The nice thing about the design works is that it actually does have some English in it, which I was not expecting. And then it also came with some flyers and such, which I'll just hold up like this. I also got some stickers with it. It's nice to finally have it. Alright, that's what I have at the moment. We've got the back end of the 1990s to look at today. And pretty important set of years for me personally. Up to 1996. I only had an NES and a Commodore 64. So my experience with video games kind of was very reliant on finding used NES games up to 1996. The rare opportunities of borrowing a Super Nintendo or a Genesis, and the Genesis I think came well after I had an N64, and the few times I got to go to an arcade. I had no real opportunity to explore the 16-bit era until well after it had passed. And I didn't have a PlayStation until PlayStation 2, so I kind of skipped Sony's entire PlayStation 1 output for the most part. That gen, I never had a Saturn, and I still don't. So I don't have any experience with that system. I didn't have a Game Boy, so I didn't get into Game Boy games all that much either until I got a Game Boy Advance, which was after the 90s. So there's probably some notable absences from some particular games that are on those other platforms. I've filled a few gaps with the PlayStation 1, so it's not completely absent. But it's wild to think that we went from 1995, where generally speaking, at least in America, we didn't have a 3D system, to the time 1999 rolled around and the Dreamcast showed up. And just like the leap of technology is just really incredible, the back half of the 90s. And I don't think that any generation since has quite had that same wow factor for me personally. Let's go ahead and get started with 1995. And the first game on that list is right where it needs to be, which is Chrono Trigger by Squaresoft. But we've also got Cleopatra Fortune by Taito, Fatal Fury 3 by SNK, Fighting Vipers by Sega. I forget the full name of this. It's Genka something Sapphire. I'm sorry, I think it's like Genka Denshi Sapphire. But that's by Hudson Soft and Red Entertainment, if I remember correctly. Marvel Superheroes by Capcom, Night Warriors Darkstalkers Revenge by Capcom, Real Bout Fatal Fury by SNK, Street Fighter Alpha by Capcom, and the original Suikoden came out in Japan in 1995 because the PlayStation got out a little earlier in Japan. So, let's take a quick gander at my top 111 list. Alright, so Chrono Trigger and Suikoden 1 are the two games from 95 that are in my top 110 list. I said 111 earlier, I meant 110. Old habits die hard. I have moved Sapphire to the third slot because I think it's one of my favorite shoot-'em-ups, and it's extraordinarily good, in my opinion. So I think it deserves to be in third place. From here, I would probably leave Cleopatra Fortune right where it is and slide Fighting Vipers into fifth place, which just leaves these other 5 fighting games to kind of duke it out. I would probably put Real Bout above Fatal Fury 3, as well as the original Alpha. And probably this looks pretty good. Top 3, though. Chrono Trigger. I love Chrono Trigger. It is the best role-playing game of all time. It is the culmination of Square and Enix's talent, with Sakaguchi and Hori working together on creating truly a masterwork in the genre. Absolutely stunning game all the way around. Visually, Akira Toriyama's artwork translates beautifully to the sprites, and in my opinion is his best work, period. The soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal. It's hard for me to believe that it was Mitsuda's first, but it is my favorite soundtrack of all time, on top of being my second favorite video game. I love the combat system. The techs make it so much fun. It's not a hard game, really. You can very easily get overpowered, but it's a game that it feels good to be overpowered, in my opinion. It's just perfect. There's very little I would change about Chrono Trigger, honestly. Maybe a couple more signposts for side quests, but that's about it. Suikoden 1 is quite a call to action for Konami. They were not really known for role-playing games, and had only really dabbled with the genre prior to Suikoden. And following Suikoden, we would get a wave of role-playing efforts from the company. We would get Vandal Hearts, we would get Azure Dreams, we would get Hybrid Heaven, as well as 5 mainline Suikoden games and Tactics. And then there would probably be a couple other obscurities that just weren't localized, or I'm just not immediately remembering. But Suikoden was intended to be a Super Famicom game that got ported up. It's on the shorter side of things because of probably a compromised development schedule, but the story that it tells is excellent and sets up the superb Suikoden 2. And it is just a well-made game. It's breezy, it's got a great soundtrack, it looks really nice for an early PS1 game with 2D graphics. It's got a very compelling base system that Suikoden 2 would then expand upon and make better. It's got good characters. The localization's a little dry, but that's okay in the grand scheme of things. It's ultimately just an extraordinarily good launch effort, and for the PS1, probably the best PlayStation RPG that came out in like the first year or two, before 97 rolled around and completely redefined everything. And then Sapphire. I just think this is the bee's knees when it comes to shoot 'em ups for me. It's got a really great soundtrack, which for shoot 'em ups really matter to me. The visual style is excellent. There's variety in the different pilots and ships you can control. It's got a really cool time travel gimmick. It just has a really awesome ambiance and mood that I really like. I think it needs to be in my top 110. So I'll probably be making a few shifts. But just to quickly touch on the other two games, Cleopatra Fortune is one of my favorite puzzle games. It's just charming and cute and does the drop down in a unique way with having to pin stuff in boxes, which I think adds a lot of complexity that I appreciate with puzzle games. And then Fighting Vipers is just a really fun 3D fighter that is gritty and has a really just compelling wall mechanic that I really like. And it's a great series. And I would love to play Fighting Vipers 2 someday. 1996. Monumental year for me. I got the N64. So I finally was able to move beyond the NES and the Commodore 64 and be able to be current with what's going on in video games to some extent. And while not my favorite year overall on this list, it's a pretty strong year with quite a few games that I think are really, really good. We've got the Dungeons & Dragons Shadows of Mysteria from Capcom, Kirby Superstar by Nintendo and HAL Labs, Magical Drop 3, probably the last Data East game we're going to see on this list. Mario Kart 64 came out in 96 in Japan, Nintendo. Metal Slug by SNK, Red Earth by Capcom, the launch of the CPS3 board. Super Mario 64 by Nintendo, Wave Race 64 by Nintendo, X-Men vs. Street Fighter by Capcom, and Virtua Fighter 3 by Sega. Alright, I've slid Mario and Wave Race to first and second after looking at the top 110 list. Mario's still on it. Wave Race just dropped off of it. Third place, that's a toughie. Because there's some really solid stuff here. I'm gonna probably lean towards Metal Slug for the time being. And then from there, probably Virtua Fighter. X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Kirby. Probably Dungeons and Dragons, then Mario Kart, and then Red Earth, and then Magical Drop. Mario 64 blew me away in 1996. When I booted up the N64 for the first time and saw Mario's face blow up on the screen, and then jumping into the game and realizing that I had this open expanse that I could just freely wander around in until I hit a hill, but that's beside the point. Getting inside the castle, realizing I could jump in the painting and see this amazing new world open up before me that I could wander around in 3 dimensions. I just remember 13-year-old me being just absolutely stunned and loving every second of Mario 64. And the nostalgia is strong. I still play that game and love it. I went through it a couple years ago when Mario 3D All-Stars came out. And got 120 stars again. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. I still think Mario 64 is one of the best outings that Nintendo's had with the plumber. And I just absolutely love that game to pieces. Wave Race 64 is my favorite racing game, period. It'll be the highest any racing game gets on this list, I think. And is just a really, really good racing game. And just showcased more of what the N64 was capable of, which the wave physics I think are still top notch. I still enjoy playing Wave Race 64. I got to finally unlock all of the tracks thanks to Nintendo Switch Online. I had to cheat to do it, but it was worth it because the 2 tracks that I never really had access to are really cool. I like them a lot. So I'm just love Wave Race 64. I would love to see a sequel on the Switch 2 that pushes the wave physics even more. Blue Storm kind of disappointed me. It just didn't feel as good as 64 did. But if we could get a new wave race, I would be really pleased. Metal Slug. Not my favorite run and gun. That's still Contra for the NES. But the series is really solid. And I want to say... Just talking about Metal Slug for a hot second reminded me I forgot to look up when Metal Slug X, which is on my top 100 title list, came out. It was 99. So you may notice that Choo Choo Rocket is no longer there. Back to 96. Metal Slug is a fantastic series, especially the first 3. And I say 3 with an asterisk because X is a better version of 2. So technically 4. But the original game does a lot right and sets a lot of the mechanics in motion, which Metal Slug X, in my opinion, is the best feeling and most interesting of the bunch. Visually, one of the most incredible looking games on the Neo Geo hardware. The animation is incredible. Nazca, coming from Irem, just had this gritty look that wasn't quite anything like SNK's norm, and they kind of basically made it part of SNK's norm. It's really cool how that worked out. But it is a phenomenal run and gun that I think deserves to be in my top 3 choices for the year. I like Virtua Fighter 3 the most of the Virtua Fighter games. It's the one I played the most. So that's why it's number 4 on this list. X vs. Street Fighter. I really liked it back when I was a kid. I revisited it with the new collection, and I definitely can feel the growing pains of being the first in the tag series. It's still good, don't get me wrong. But in comparison to Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it's not as solid. 1997 is a very fascinating year. I don't like Final Fantasy VII. So that's probably the biggest omission. There's a couple others that are not immediately leaping to mind that came out that year. But my 97 choices are Blast Corps by Rare, Bomberman 64 by Hudson, Bushido Blade by Square Enix, well, Squaresoft at the time, Castlevania Symphony of the Night by Konami, GoldenEye 007 by Rare, International Superstar Soccer 64 by Konami, King of Fighters 97 by SNK, Pucci Karat by Taito, Real Bout Fatal Fury Special by SNK, and Star Fox 64 by Nintendo. And Castlevania is in the top 110, but I don't think anything else is. So I get to kind of decide where the other games go. And I think GoldenEye's got to be number 2 for me personally. And out of what's remaining in terms of playtime and just overall joy, and not being completely outclassed by a sequel that will be in the next year's discussion, I'm going to lean towards Bomberman 64. And then I think Star Fox would be 4th. Bushido Blade, I think I would slide into 5th. Real Bout would probably be 6th. King of Fighters would be around it, but I do think I prefer Real Bout a little bit more. And this is probably accurate. Yeah, I think this is now accurate. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is my 21st favorite game of all time, and it's the second best Castlevania behind Aria of Sorrow. It is easily the most beautiful, the most lush, the most atmospheric of the Castlevania games, because they had technology and enough of a budget to actually throw a lot of time and effort into making it look amazing. It has a great soundtrack, it has so much content and things to find and little secrets. It's mechanically the first Metroidvania, which is where the Vania part in that subgenre comes from. And for a first attempt, really does a lot of things right. Probably shouldn't have had the sub-weapon system from the Belmonts. Probably should have figured out a way to make the inverted castle less annoying to traverse. Really would have loved the super jump to not be down, up, and then jump, but to actually be a button. I would have loved it if they didn't have to drop food items on the ground to eat them. Just a lot of little quirks that got ironed out in the later games, but it doesn't take away from the fact that Symphony of the Night is still one of the best Castlevania games, and truly a defining moment in the series. GoldenEye, rare out of nowhere, decides to develop a first-person shooter on a license from a movie that came out 2 years ago, and revolutionizes not only the genre, but the very nature of video games with a excellent license title out of nowhere. GoldenEye added a mission structure, added like in-game narrative sequences to an FPS, added escort missions. Mileage may vary on that one. And varying difficulties with additional objectives and level design tweaks based on the difficulty, as well as challenging cheat speed-through runs that you have to make to be able to unlock cheats in the game. Plus, multiplayer was sensational. An absolute blast playing that when I was younger. So it's very clear why Nintendo worked out the deal they did to get GoldenEye on NSO, because it was a monumental game at the time. Perfect Dark is better, in my opinion, but GoldenEye set an incredible standard that so many FPSs followed in. And the ones that I really like are the ones that are the ones closest to GoldenEye's mechanical worldview. Bomberman 64. That is a game I obsessed over as a kid. I love the puzzle platforming elements about it. The boss designs I drew so many times. It's not even funny. It's got a really good soundtrack, and the multiplayer is a lot of fun. It's my favorite Bomberman game of all time. And putting it in third place, I think, is very fitting, considering how many Bomberman games there are. It's my personal favorite. And a quick rundown of the rest. Star Fox 64 is my favorite Star Fox. I currently don't own it, but I do have it on NSO, and I would like to replay it at some point in the near future. Bushido Blade is a really cool fighting game, not Square's wheelhouse, really, but they were working with Dream Factory, which I think this is their best game. Just being able to instantly end a match adds so much tension. It's a really cool fighting game. I like it a lot. 1998. This is the most competitive year, I think. For me personally, out of the late 90s. We've got quite a few games on my top 110 floating around. We've got International Superstar Soccer 98, The Last Blade 2, Ocarina of Time, and Suikoden, and Street Fighter Alpha. All competing for the top 3 spots. And I've already got them listed and ranked, so I'm going to just follow that rank. But these other 5, let's just talk about them real quick. I think RE2 Classic should be 6th. It was on my top 110 list. I think Mars vs. Capcom has to be 7th, given how much importance it has to me on the whole. And Body Harvest should probably be 8th, because it was on my top 110 as well. And probably Link's Awakening. Well, actually, I think I like Banjo a little bit more. Let me look at that list real fast. All right. probably not the order you might have expected unless you've seen my top 110 video. But Street Fighter Alpha 3 is my second favorite. I always have to pause because it's like, is it Street Fighter 6 or Alpha 3? It's now Street Fighter 6 is my favorite Street Fighter. Alpha 3 is my second, but Alpha 3 is the most important one to me out of all the Street Fighters because it's the one I owned first. Believe it or not. I got it on the Dreamcast in 2000 pretty much as soon as possible, and I've spent hundreds of hours playing it. It is easily my favorite of the 2D sprite Street Fighter games, which, you know, is going to probably set off the Third Strike people and the Alpha 2 people, but that's just how it landed. I like having variety. There's more characters in Alpha 3. The isms add a lot for me. I can concede that Alpha 2 is probably the more mechanically sound game because there's less. So there was just less like chaos, basically. But I really like Alpha 3 a lot, specifically the Dreamcast version. I also like the Game Boy Advance version, which is a technical showpiece for that system, powering not only the roster from Street Fighter Alpha Upper, which added Guile and DJ and Fei Long and etc., but also added in Yun and Maki and Eagle from CBS2 for no real reason beyond they could, making it the biggest roster until the PSP version came out a couple years later. But I just love Alpha 3. It's my Street Fighter preference. Internet Superstar Soccer 98 is the greatest sports game of all time. And it is still fun for me to play today. And I just think it's one the best playing sports game. It feels so good. It just has a great vibe to it. I would love to get 2000. I've just never come across the cart. And given Konami is yet to do an N64 game, I'm afraid that I will never get the opportunity to do it legally. But fingers crossed that someday that will happen. Suikoden 2 is a little above Ocarina of Time. As I was saying with Suikoden 1, I really, really love what they did with Suikoden to set it up. The first game's events leads to the second game's events. And you get a different protagonist that I like Ryo a lot. I really like the supporting cast. The general expansion of everything is really felt in Suikoden 2. And for me, that's a positive. I love the bigger base. I love the more complex battle system. I love the improved visuals. The soundtrack is amazing. The translation's rough on the original PlayStation version. It just didn't get done with sufficient time, so it's a little bit compromised in some areas. Some stuff glitches because it wasn't done right. So I'm excited about the remaster and being able to play it how it was supposed to have been played in Japan. But it's one of my favorite role-playing games. And is still like that gold standard for that series that the rest of the PS2 games couldn't quite reach. What more can I say about Ocarina of Time? At the time, revolutionary again, much like Mario 64 and GoldenEye before it, redefined what an action-adventure game could be. The unfortunate thing about Ocarina of Time is that Zelda has reiterated that formula and improved upon it with practically every game that's followed, that it's a little hard to go back to Ocarina and appreciate what it was doing when you can play Twilight Princess or Wind Waker or Breath of the Wild. But I still think it's a phenomenal game, and it's still in my top 110, and I don't think it'll ever leave. Because it was a very important game to me when I was growing up. it was my favorite game of all time for several years. And then last but not least to touch on, Last Blade 2 is one of my favorite SNK fighters. I love the atmosphere, the mood of this game is so good, the sprite work is incredible. The soundtrack is minimal, but it works really well with the vibe. I like the characters a lot. I'm still learning how to play it properly, but I think it's a phenomenally good game. Alright, we are almost done. We're now in 1999, and we've got a lot of SNK on this particular bunch, and Capcom, but this is SNK's heaviest showing, and it's going to be unfortunate because this is going to probably be, generally speaking, the last we're going to see SNK this heavy on my looking back lists, because following 1999, getting into 2000, 2001, they started having their financial problems and got bought out. So we're going to probably not have this degree of SNK love on any other year. But we got Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves, King of Fighters 99, Metal Slug X, all SNK, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis by Capcom, Silent Hill by Konami, Soul Calibur, Dreamcast specifically. Soul Calibur came out in 98 in arcades, but 99 Dreamcast version is what I'm specifically citing here. Match of the Millennium, Neo Geo Pocket by SNK, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike by Capcom, Strider 2 by Capcom, and Worms Armageddon by Team 17. Okay, so I have arranged the top 3 based on my top 110 list. Let's do the rest. I think that Silent Hill and Third Strike will round out the top 5. 99 is probably where it needs to be. I would put Armageddon here. I would probably put Match of the Millennium there. And Strider 2 above Nemesis. Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves is my favorite SNK game, period. It is the counterpoint to Third Strike, and I prefer it over Third Strike. I like the visual style. I love just the animation. The new character designs are excellent almost all the way around. The brave decision to basically only have Terry come back and everyone else is new. There's a few characters that are callbacks, but generally speaking, this is almost an entirely new cast. The confidence in Mark of the Wolves is everywhere. And that's why I think it's my favorite SNK game, is that this truly was SNK showing all of the technical know-how and an experience they built, and was truly like their last hurrah as that particular chunk of the studio. They went all in on Mark of the Wolves. I don't know how successful it was in the grand scheme of things, but the fact that it rivals Third Strike visually when it's on hardware that came out in 1991 or 1990, I don't remember exactly when the Neo Geo came out, but it's something. It's truly something. And speaking of games that stun, Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast. I can't think of any other video game that truly showed off what a new system was capable of more than Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur looked rough in comparison in the arcade when you look at the Dreamcast version. The Dreamcast hardware just made that game sing. It is my favorite 3D fighting game. All the sequels have failed to hook me the same way that the original did. It's truly a landmark, and it is one of my favorite, if not... I can't say it's my favorite Namco game, but it is up there. I think Legend of Valkyrie is a little higher. And then Metal Slug X, the best of the Metal Slug games. One of the best running guns ever made. a refined Metal Slug 2 that truly just polished up everything and made it shine. I don't know what else to say beyond it is one of the best arcade experiences you can have. The launch of the Silent Hill franchise. I love the first 3 Silent Hill games. Silent Hill 1 is not on my top 110 list, but it could be, depending on my mood. There's just some really awesome thought processes going on with Silent Hill that the 2 sequels that I love on the PlayStation 2 would take and truly define their mark. But the framework is here, and it's sound with Silent Hill 1. It's just the PlayStation 1 just wasn't quite up to the task that the PlayStation 2 was for truly realizing their vision. That doesn't mean that it's a bad game. That doesn't mean that it's disappointing. It's just that the ambition of Team Silent was beyond the PlayStation 1. I think it's a superb psychological horror game and would truly set the stage for greater things to come. And last but not least, in terms of the longer talks, Third Strike. I like Third Strike. Don't get me wrong. I think it is behind Street Fighter 6 and Street Fighter Alpha 3. My third favorite Street Fighter game. I think that's where I put it. It's a really, really solid and truly remarkable effort. And it is visually stunning, has a great atmosphere and ambiance. It's just, for me personally, I have a harder time getting into the roster. I love Makoto. I love Makoto to pieces. I think Ibuki's awesome. I'm looking forward to Elena in 6. But outside of that, outside of the characters that I'm familiar with, it was harder for me to resonate with Street Fighter 3's cast. And I think that's the reason why I prefer Mark of the Wolves, honestly, is that while Capcom did make a bold decision to have Ryu and Ken be the only starting characters, by the time they got to the 3rd iteration, Akuma and Chun-Li are also there. And I think I prefer the approach that 4, 5, and 6 have had of returning characters and introducing new faces to fit in with those instead of basically reinventing the whole slate. Anyway, that is the end of the 90s. When we get back, we're going to start talking in the 2000s and introducing the GameCube and the PlayStation 2 and the Game Boy Advance. All systems that I spent a lot more time on. Truly going to be opening things up a lot once we get into the next video. But I feel pretty solid about this particular grouping. I think this was a very critical set of years for me. And when I look at these games, it's like I don't feel like I'm just sliding a whole lot on here because I ran out of games. Like Pucci Karat, maybe. But I do like it. But this, like, when I look at the top 5 games, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And then just expanding that out, it's like, this is good. This is a good set of 5 years. I will see you next time I see you. Have a wonderful set of days until then. Thank you for joining me and take care.